Hello everyone, I'm Dave Thomas, and today I am building the Sparrow boost glider rocket from Starlight Model Rockets. This is the first Starlight kit I've ever tried, and so this will be a little bit of a new experience for me. I don't do a lot of boost gliders. I've built a few over the years, but they're not usually one of the things I go out of my way for. But I think this one should be a lot of fun. And boost gliders in general can be tricky, but this one should go together fairly readily. So let's go ahead and check our parts list here. Here we go, it's on the back. Okay, so we've got a body tube, a launch lug, nose cone, clay, and this will be used to trim the balance on it once it's done. And then fin material and some self-adhesive decals here. So everything that's supposed to be here is. Alright, now they want us to first of all cut out the fins. Okay, so we're going to cut this out. And what they want us to do here is kind of strange, actually. So they want us to leave the wing and the diffuser together here. The illustration here looks a little different than that. So we'll have to see how this goes as we go along here. The idea here is if we leave these together, we can sand all the edges at the same time. Now, something they don't have us do right away, and I'm going to go ahead and do it first, is sand the faces of this. So I'm just going to use some 150 grit sandpaper here. And go ahead and sand both faces of the wings while they're still in the stock material. Okay, so we'll try this. I'm going to take my hobby knife here, and so these are still a little bit attached to each other, but not down here. And so we could leave this part here and this part here attached, but we're still not going to be able to sand it all. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut these out, but try to leave the diffusers attached to the wingtips. And they recommend holding on to the scrap here to use this for applying glue. You can if you like. I usually just use applicators anyway. Next we're going to stack these together, and then with a piece of sandpaper on a flat surface here, we're just going to sand all the edges just by running these across. Oh, yeah, I was afraid that had happened. Alright, so the diffusers have fallen off. And I'm going to go ahead and cut those through. So we'll do the wings first and then come back to the diffusers. Okay, that's a little bit interesting. One wing is actually a little bit longer than the others. I'm going to go ahead and sand those down till they are uniform out there. Now the problem is it tends to put a little bit of a curve on it there. We don't want that. Okay, then we'll do like a little bit more up on the leading side and then on the root edges. Okay, and then for the diffusers here, we'll do the same thing. All right, now here too, one's a little bit longer than the other, and not quite at the same angle. So I'm going to try and match those as best I can. Okay, now when this is glued together, it's going to go like this. Okay, so those will be hanging off the wing tips. And so on both of these, right, the greater angle here of the edge, that'll be the leading edge. This will be the trailing edge. And then we've got the tip edges. And what we want to do next is round the leading and trailing edges, but keep the root and tip edges squared off. Okay, so here again I'm going to use some 150 grit sandpaper. I'm going to start by just kind of flattening out the corners a little bit of those edges. Alright, and then we can start rounding them off. Okay, and we'll just check back in the cross section here as we do this to make sure they're even on both sides. The glue has set, and so now I'm going to just move this around and do the same thing with the other wing here. So once again we'll put a thin coating of glue on the tip edge of the wing. Okay, now make sure that we're in the right configuration here, like so. Okay, and once more, this is going to go right onto the wing tip. And we'll put a square up next to that. Alright, change orientation just so it's easier for me to see. And I think what's happening here is that there's just a little bit of a curvature to the tip edge, and so it's not wanting to go right up to a 90-degree angle there. Alright, but I'm going to kind of force it into that. Okay, and once again I'm going to let that dry. The glue on my wings is continuing to dry, So next I'm going to go ahead and attach the nose cone to the body tube. Now normally we would put the glue in the body tube, but I don't want to force glue down inside there where it might interfere with the motor. Because in order for this to glide properly, it has to be able to eject the motor smoothly. And if we get glue pushed down into the tube, when that heats up, it can actually grab onto the motor and might prevent ejection. Alright, so you can just pick one end here, glue up the nose cone shoulder. We'll put that in and just kind of smooth out that excess glue. Alright, now here again, the instructions having us put sanding sealer on after we get everything built. On the nose cone, if you wanted to, you could do it beforehand or just not put any sanding sealer on it. So I'll set this aside to dry as well. The wing glue is dry enough that we can handle it here. And I'm going to go ahead and put some fillets on these now. The instructions don't call for it until a little bit later. But in just a bit, we're going to be putting some stress on these, so I think it's best to strengthen them ahead of time. So I'm just going to put a little glue on each one of these on the inside of the diffusers. Alright, then have something to wipe my fingers with. And now I'm going to go ahead, smooth that in. And I'm going to make these a little heavier than I normally do. Just so we do get some extra strength, and also just to help fill in these gaps here. And go ahead and put them back on the wax paper so that if it drips around, it doesn't stick to your work surface. Okay, and now I'm going to let those dry some more. My fillets are dry, but I think I'm going to put another layer on. And what's going to happen here is once those fillets are completely done, the diffusers act as templates basically to hold this at the correct angle. And then what we're going to do is sand these perpendicular while they're laying at an angle. So the root edges here are going to have a bit of an angle to them so that when they glue together, they'll have a maximum surface area there. Now doing that, trying to sand this is going to be not easy, and we'll put some pressure out here on the wingtips. So here again, I'm going to go ahead and add a little more glue. And now I'm also going to put some over here on this seam. Not a lot, just enough to reinforce it a little bit here. Okay, and then redo this one. Okay, now this little gap here at the edge and back here at the trailing edge, I'm going to fill in with contour putty a little bit later and then sand that to make it a little more smooth. Okay, same thing over here. I'm going to do the back side of this edge. And then we'll add a little more glue here. And once again, let those dry. The reinforcing glue that I put on the joints here has finished drying. And so as I mentioned earlier, our next step is going to be to shape this so that we get maximum contact between the two wings. And you can do this either with a sanding block or a sanding tee. I'm going to use an emery board here because I can also use it straight upright like this. Okay, so however you want to do it, your sanding surface should be perpendicular to the work surface here, and then we just need to drag this back a few times. And then do the same thing on the other one. Alright, now these are just emery boards. You can get these generally in the nails section of department stores, cosmetic areas, things like that. Okay, and so here I'm just going to bring these together again and see how well the edges are. Now what's happened here is at the ends of the sweeps here, it's actually bending outward a little bit. Alright, so to help prevent that, what we can do is just stiffen our sanding here just a little bit by putting a ruler behind it. Okay, do it that way. And once more. Alright, now we'll put these together again. Okay, and look how they are articulating there. All right, that does give us a better surface. So now we'll glue these together. Right, once again, use some wax paper on your surface so that the glue doesn't stick to it. Here I'm going to use an applicator. You don't need to, it's just at the moment the nozzle on this glue is all plugged up. So we'll just do this. And again, it's better to use a thin layer here that will dry quickly and then reinforce it rather than using a really heavy layer of glue. That will take much longer to dry. Okay, and then back on our paper here, we'll just put these two together. And make sure they're even. I'm just going to hold a little bit of pressure on them for a few seconds here. Okay. We do still have a little bit of gap, and again that's where it kind of turned outward as we were sanding it. We will fill that in with a fillet later on. For now I'm going to let this completely dry, and then we'll come back and add a fillet to it. Now that the initial glue joint is dry, I'm going to reinforce that here with some more glue. It's not that much glue. It's way more than I need. Okay, so I'm just going to take a finger here and smooth that in. Alright, that's, as I say, that's actually way too much glue. Wipe off the excess there. And then when that dries, we'll glue the body tube on over it. Okay, on the underside of this, this is not meeting as well as I would like. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a fillet here. Okay, I'm going to smooth that in as well. Back on the top surface here, we're ready to apply glue to mount the body tube. And so once again, we're just going to run this along the seam there. And we can use a fairly heavy amount. And then we're going to go ahead and put this on. And the aft end should be flush with the back of the wing there. Okay, and I'm just going to hold that for a moment, and then we'll put this back down evenly and let that dry once more. The glue on the body tube here is mostly dry enough to handle. And just making sure that it's as centered as we can get it. It's actually leaned over a little bit for some reason. I think we're going to have to leave that there. Okay, and so now the launch lug is going to go in the center of that bottom seam. So here we'll just apply a little bit of glue. Okay, and we'll just kind of move this until we're pretty close to centered there. And then once that dries, we'll go ahead and add some more glue to that joint as well, and also put some fillets on either side. Yeah, the body tube did kind of shift over to one side. I'm going to see if I can roll it here. I've put 3 coats of sandable filling primer on this, and then sanded it first with 220 and then 320 grit sandpaper. You can still see a little bit of the wood grain here, but I think for the most part, once we get paint on that, it's not going to be very noticeable. And so my next task will be to go ahead and paint this, and then we'll come back. Well, I had this almost completely painted, and then I had paint crinkles. I've sanded most of that. You can see a little bit there. And I think what happened was I did a little bit of light sanding after my last coat of paint in preparation for the final coat, and some of the sanding dust remained on there. And it seems like when that happens, you have a greater chance of the top coat crinkling there. So this has been mostly sanded. I'm going to have to sand it a little bit more, and then we'll try the top coat again. Here I have repainted after the crinkling incident, and really the only thing left to do is to apply the decal. Okay, so we have to cut these out. Now if you want, you can cut out everything that's not blue on this. I'm just going to trim it here and just transfer the whole thing. There we go. Alright, and this is going to go right here. Try to center that as best as possible. Although on this model, my centering ability has been a bit off. I think we'll go with that. Okay, and then the Sparrow part, you could almost put it in there if you wanted to. I'm not going to. I'm just going to put it on a wing. There we go. Hardest part's just getting it off the paper. Alright, and I'm just going to kind of run this in line with the trailing edge of the wing there. Okay, so structurally that's it. And frankly, I was almost ready to kind of give up on this and not even finish the video since I had kind of messed up the alignment of the tube here. But I decided that's, making mistakes is how you learn, and even someone who's done this for decades can still screw things up. So hopefully you learn from my mistakes and watch this before you build your own. Now, it's not ready for flight quite yet. So it does come with a little bit of clay, and you'll need to use that in order to trim this. Now, I'm not going to do it now because it really needs to be done before every flight. But if you come back to our instructions here, all right, it shows where to add little bits of clay. So you'll probably want to put some up near here, and maybe a little back here at the wingtips. Okay, I can almost guarantee that this is going to curve in flight, and so Most of the time I actually like it to curve a little bit so it doesn't go gliding off into the wild blue yonder and it kind of spirals into where we are. But for this you'll need to do this on your own. Give it some tests, throw it, make sure it flies correctly, and then go launch it. Okay, so with that, I hope you have a good time building this. Have a great flight and a safe recovery, and please stay tuned for more of my videos.